Welcome back to the deep dive. This time, we're going deep into Philippine civil law.
All
You
right.
guys sent us a whole bunch of cases,
Yeah.
contracts, property
A
disputes,
little bit of everything.
even some marital drama.
It
So
is.
get ready for a whirlwind tour of Philippine law. But don't worry,
Yeah.
we're going to break it all down, hit the highlights, and give you those legal aha moments you need
That's right.
to navigate everyday life, even if you're not a lawyer.
I think what's so interesting about these cases is that it really showcases the principle of fairness in action.
Yeah.
It's not just about like blindly applying the law.
Right.
It's about making sure there's justice and equity.
Fairness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's jump into our first theme here. Navigating contracts and obligations. We're going to start with a case that I think illustrates that even if you had good intentions, it doesn't always mean you're off the hook.
Right.
We're talking about the you can't keep what you shouldn't have principle.
Exactly.
So this is the case of Social Security System versus Commission on Audit, or SSS-VCOA. And it involves SSS employees that were paid incentives for several years.
For a long time, yeah.
Okay, so a little bonus. Sounds nice. What's the problem?
Well, the problem is there was no legal basis for those incentives.
Oh,
No authorization, no paperwork, and the COA, the Commission on Audit, said, nope, can't do that. These payments weren't allowed, and they had to return the money.
wow. I bet they weren't happy about that. So even if they didn't know it was wrong at the time, they still had to give the money back. That's a tough lesson.
It is a tough lesson.
Yeah.
The legal concept here is solutio in debiti,
Okay.
which essentially means you can't keep a payment if there was no legal obligation to make it in the first place.
Oh, okay.
And that's considered unjust enrichment.
So it would be unfair.
Unfair for them to keep it.
Keep it. Yeah, okay. I see that. So what's our takeaway here for the listener?
Double check.
Yeah.
Always double check when you're getting payments or benefits, especially if something seems too good to be true.
Right. Too good to be true probably is.
Yeah, probably is.
Okay, good advice. Now, this next case might resonate with anyone who's ever had to deal with a confusing contract.
Yeah.
One of those situations where it's hard to tell what you agreed upon.
For sure.
This is the case of Virgilio A. Toc Visa Primido Conde, and it's all about a land sale gone wrong.
A land sale gone bad.
Yeah. So what happened?
Well, it boils down to this question. Is it a sale or is it just an agreement to sell? And in this case, the buyer said he had a verbal agreement with the seller for a later payment date.
Okay.
But the seller insisted on the original date.
So it's a he said, she said.
Classic he said, she said. Who do you believe?
Right. So what's the takeaway here?
Clear contract language.
Yes.
Whether ownership transfers immediately or later, it's all about the language.
So get it in writing.
Yes, definitely.
All right, moving on to a case that adds a third party into the mix.
Okay.
We're talking about Subic Bay Distribution v. Western Guarantee Corp. Surety bonds. This always makes my head spin.
Oh, it can be.
Yeah. Can you break it down for us?
Sure. So we have Subic Bay Distribution, SBDI, supplying fuel to Prime Asia Sales and Services, PASI.
Okay.
And PASI gets Western Guarantee, WGC, to issue this surety bond, guaranteeing they'll pay.
So WGC's like the insurance
The safety net.
if PASI doesn't pay.
Exactly.
Okay.
But then PASI doesn't pay, so SBDI goes after WGC.
Makes sense.
But WGC says, hold on. The original agreement between SBDI and PASI changed, so we're not on the hook anymore.
Oh, a twist. So did it work? Did the changes to the original contract void that surety bond?
Well, that's what the courts had to figure out.
Uh-huh.
Were the changes significant enough?
And-
They looked at things like changes to delivery dates,
Okay.
credit terms, that sort of thing.
So were they? Were they significant?
They weren't considered substantial, so WGC still had to pay.
Wow. Okay. So what should our listener take away from this case?
Surety bonds are tied to the original contract. Even small changes can have big effects. Think through those changes very carefully,
Good point.
especially when a third party is involved.
Absolutely. All right, up next, a case that I think a lot of people can relate to. Surprise fees.
Yeah.
But imagine this. You retire and you find out your loan has ballooned into this unmanageable amount.
Oh, that's the worst.
This is the case of Clarita Diaclato v. GSIS.
Right. And it involved a retired teacher, Ms. Aclato, who took out several loans from GSIS, the Government Service Insurance System.
Okay.
But upon retirement, she found that her loan had accumulated all this interest and all these penalties.
Oh, no. How did that happen?
Well, GSIS had imposed a 12% interest rate on arrears
Okay.
and a 6% penalty, both compounded monthly.
So it just kept growing.
Yeah, and that kind of compounding can really make a small debt into a huge burden.
I can see why she was upset about that. So did she win? Did she fight back?
She did. She fought back and won.
Good for her.
The courts found that those interest rates and penalties, frankly, were excessive.
Yeah.
They were unconscionable, and they ordered GSIS to reduce them and even return some of the money she had already paid.
Wow. What a victory.
It was.
Yeah. So what's the key takeaway here?
Even if a contract exists, it has to be reasonable.
Right.
It has to be fair.
Fair. Okay. Now, our last case in this theme is Quezon City Eye Center v. PhilHealth. And I think this brings up a question a lot of people have probably wondered about. Can a company be held responsible for a doctor's actions?
Right. That's a good question.
So what happened in this case?
So this involved alleged irregularities in patient recruitment at the Quezon City Eye Center for cataract operations.
Okay.
PhilHealth accused the eye center of being responsible even though those doctors weren't direct employees.
So PhilHealth was saying that even if they weren't your employees, you're still responsible for what they do.
Exactly. They were relying on the legal concept of apparent authority.
Okay.
Which means if a hospital acts in a way that makes it seem like a doctor is an employee, then they can be held liable.
Interesting. But I'm guessing it didn't apply here.
No, the court decided the issue wasn't medical malpractice,
Okay.
but a breach of contract between the eye center and PhilHealth.
So apparent authority wasn't really relevant in this case.
Right, not in this case.
So what do we want our listener to take away from this?
The doctrine of apparent authority is real.
Okay.
It exists in Philippine law, and it's a big deal for healthcare providers.
So they need to be really careful.
Very careful, especially when working with independent contractors.
Manage those relationships carefully.
Manage them carefully, yeah.
All right, good advice. Well, we've covered a lot of ground with contracts and obligations, but now we're switching gears to a topic that I know is always rife with drama: land and property disputes.
Oh, yeah.
So for our second theme, we're diving into the complexities of land and property, starting with a case that shows why finders keepers doesn't always fly in the legal world. It's heirs of Angel Yadao v. heirs of Juan Calatina.
Right, this is a classic land dispute, decades long.
Wow.
Two families fighting over a piece of land.
So what are we dealing with here? What are the issues?
Inheritance, questionable documents, and people living on land for years thinking they owned it.
Oh, that sounds like a mess.
It is a mess.
What are the key legal concepts at play here?
Two big ones: acquisitive prescription and extinctive prescription.
Okay, I know these can get confusing. Can you break them down for us?
Sure. So acquisitive prescription, you gain ownership by possessing something for a long time.
Okay, so if you're living on it, using it.
Openly, continuously.
Yeah, for years and years.
Right. Then you might be able to claim it as yours.
Even without that formal title.
Exactly. But then we have extinctive prescription. That's the opposite.
Okay.
You lose the right to claim ownership if you don't act for too long.
Oh, so you snooze, you lose.
Kind of, yeah.
So who ended up with the land in this case?
Neither family.
What?
That's right. The court said since it was registered land, they couldn't just claim it because they'd been living there. But the other family waited too long to make their claim.
Oh, so they were out of time.
Out of time.
The land went to the public domain.
Wow, a lose-lose situation. What's the lesson here for our listener?
Be proactive. Don't wait.
Yeah.
Get the paperwork in order.
Especially with land.
Especially with land in the Philippines.
Okay, good advice. Now our next case takes us from finders keepers to the right to reclaim what was lost.
Oh, wait.
It's spouses, the Anuncio Duadua Senior VRT Dino Development Corps.
Yeah.
And it centers around the idea of a homestead.
Homesteads are so important.
They are. So imagine this. You're forced to sell your family's homestead.
Oh, that's hard.
And years later, you want to buy it back. Can you do it?
It's a tough situation, but there's hope.
Okay.
The Public Land Act has this thing called the right of repurchase.
Okay.
It's designed to protect people who had to sell their homesteads.
So it gives them a chance to get it back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in this case, the Duadua family won.
Good
They
job.
got to buy back their land.
That's even though the company that bought it tried to fight them.
Wow. So there really is a legal safety net in place.
There is. The court recognized the emotional value of that land.
That's heartwarming.
Yeah.
Okay, our next case takes us from homesteads to the unpredictable power of nature.
Nature can be tough.
Yeah, it can. This is Aurora Tenswan v. Heirs of Ma, Isabel M. Vasquez. Imagine a river changes course,
Okay.
adds land to one property and takes it away from another.
Interesting.
Who gets to keep that new land?
That is the question.
It is.
This is about accretion.
Okay.
The buildup of land by natural forces.
So in this case, did the land automatically belong to the person whose property it ended up on?
Not so fast.
Oh.
They had to look at the titles, make
Okay.
sure they were valid.
So even though the river did the work, the law still had to step in and figure out ownership.
Exactly. Nature might create the land, but the law says who owns it.
Okay, that
Excellent.
makes sense.
New.
Now this next case, spouses Teodorico and Vio Vicente, spouses Danilo El Vio Vicente, shows how land disputes can get really personal.
Unfortunately.
Family members, accusations of wrongdoing.
Always sad to see.
So what happened here?
Well, this couple said their son pressured them into signing over their property with no payment.
Oh no.
And then they found out that the son and his wife used a forged document.
Oh, that's even worse.
It is. They basically stole the property.
So could the parents get it back? I know there are time limits for legal claims. Was it too late?
In this case, no.
Okay.
The court made an exception because of the forgery.
So they didn't have to worry about those time limits.
Right? The transfer was void from the start.
Well, that's good. At least justice was served. So what's our key takeaway here?
Understand those time limits,
Yeah.
but know that courts can make exceptions, especially in cases of deception.
Especially when families are involved. Now, let's take a look at a case about communication breakdowns, and we're talking about money here.
Oh, yeah. Those can be tough.
This is the case of spouses Lourdes v. Raphael and R. Raphael v. Government Service Insurance System, GSIS. Imagine thinking your payments are all good, you're all set, and then bam.
Hit with a huge bill.
Yeah, a huge outstanding balance.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
Yeah. So in this case, the Raphael spouses thought everything was fine with their housing loan.
They thought they were making payments.
Exactly. But GSIS was saying, nope, you owe us a ton of money and you got to pay up fast or we're taking your property.
Oh, no.
What happened? Were they actually behind?
They said they weren't.
So who was right?
Well, the court actually sided with the Raphael spouses.
They did?
They said that GSIS had messed up.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't communicate clearly about changes to the monthly payments, and there were inconsistencies in how they applied the payments.
So it sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare.
Basically.
Wow. Okay. What's the takeaway here for our listeners?
Be diligent.
Huh.
Keep records.
Especially when you're dealing with big institutions.
Especially then, yeah.
Okay, now this next case might make you wonder, was it a duck or a rabbit?
Ha! That's a good way to put it.
It's Fräulein Dalla v. Editha Eaticio.
Okay.
It shows how things aren't always what they seem, especially with property.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got a dispute over land.
Uh-huh.
One side says it was a sale
Okay.
with a right to buy back later, a pacto de retro.
Right.
But the other side says it was a loan disguised as a sale.
Using the land as collateral.
So like a sneaky way to get around lending rules.
Yeah, a little bit of legal trickery.
So was it a sale or a loan?
The court had to be a detective here.
Right.
They looked at everything, and they saw through it.
They did.
They ruled it was an equitable mortgage.
So a loan disguised as a sale.
Exactly.
Wow, good for them. So what's the lesson here for our listener?
Be skeptical.
Uh-huh.
Look for red flags.
Especially if a deal seems too good to be true.
Too good to be true, probably is.
Probably is. All right, our next case involves a lawyer facing accusations of serious misconduct.
Oh, that's always tough.
Yeah. Jose Pising v. Perfecto S. Corpus. So what happened here?
Someone hired this lawyer.
Things didn't work out.
Happens.
The client was unhappy and wanted a refund.
Okay.
The lawyer refused.
So the client got mad.
They got mad and filed a complaint,
Okay.
accusing the lawyer of all sorts of misconduct. But there was no evidence.
So basically making stuff up.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow. Did the lawyer just have to take that?
No, they fought back.
Good.
The court threw out the complaint and even awarded damages to the lawyer
Damages for what?
for the damage to their reputation.
Oh, from the false accusation.
Exactly. It's a reminder to use the legal system responsibly.
Right. Don't just throw around accusations without proof.
It can backfire.
Okay, now for our final theme, we're going to explore a concept unique to the Philippines.
All right.
Psychological incapacity
Interesting one.
as grounds for marriage annulment.
Right, because the Philippines doesn't have divorce.
Yeah. Annulment is the only option, but what exactly does psychological incapacity mean?
It's not just about being incompatible.
Okay.
It's much deeper than that.
It means that someone was unable to fulfill the obligations of marriage from the
Ah.
very beginning.
So not just problems that pop up later on.
No, it has to be something that existed before the marriage.
So what kind of evidence do they look for?
Behavior patterns, personality traits,
Uh-huh.
even expert testimony from psychologists.
So it's not just one spouse saying, my partner's crazy, we need an annulment.
No, it has to be more than that.
Okay. Can you give us some examples of situations where the court annulled marriages for psychological incapacity?
Absolutely. We've got a bunch of cases here.
Okay.
Like Zefti Fopelon v. Neil F. Fopelon, where there was infidelity, neglect, abuse, all stemming from psychological issues.
Oh, wow.
Then there's Go v. Go, where both spouses had personality disorders.
So sometimes it's a two-way street.
It can be.
Okay.
We've got cases with infidelity and financial mismanagement,
Okay.
cases with extreme jealousy, manipulation, even violence.
Wow. So it runs the gamut.
It does.
Yeah. But a diagnosis alone doesn't guarantee an annulment, right?
Yeah,
No, the court really scrutinizes those.
they do.
Yeah, they want to make sure that it truly prevented the person from being a good spouse.
So it's not just a get-out-of-jail-free card.
No, not at all.
So what about cases where they didn't find psychological incapacity?
Well, there's espiritu v. boec espiritu.
Okay.
The husband said his wife was nagging, jealous, suspicious.
Sounds like a lot of marriages, honestly.
Right. The court wasn't convinced
So they didn't see that as enough.
and saw it as normal marital problems, not grounds for annulment.
Okay, so there's a high bar for proving psychological incapacity.
Very high.
Okay. So how does the court actually evaluate these cases?
They look for three things: juridical antecedents, gravity, and incurability.
Okay, big words. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. Juridical antecedents means the problem existed before the marriage.
Okay, got it. What about gravity?
Gravity refers to how serious the incapacity is.
So it can't just be like, oh, they're kind of annoying.
Right. It has to be serious enough that they can't fulfill their duties as a spouse.
Yeah.
And incurability,
Incurability means it's unlikely to change,
Oh.
even with therapy.
even with help. Okay.
Yeah.
So these are the three big things the court considers.
Yes. And we have even more cases that really show how these elements play out.
Like what?
Well, Malott, Virginia D.R. Halog v. Wilbur Francis G. Halog, for example.
Uh-huh.
The husband had antisocial personality disorder.
Hmm.
Infidelity, abuse, abandonment, all stemming from that.
So they linked it back to that pre-existing condition.
Exactly.
Okay. What else?
We've got Bernardine S. Santos Ganton v. John Ross C. Gantan.
Mm-hmm.
The husband couldn't hold a job, was violent, unfaithful.
So they found that he was just incapable of being a good husband.
Right, because of his personality disorder.
Okay, and one more.
Sure. Janice Maricela Kwan v. Marcelino A. Kwan Jr.
Okay.
Extreme jealousy and violence.
Oh, no.
Stemming from a paranoid personality disorder.
So his jealousy was that bad that it ruined the marriage?
It prevented him from being a good partner, yeah.
Wow. All right, now for a different kind of case.
Okay.
Total Petroleum Philippines Corporation v. Edgardo Lim. And it's all about estoppel.
Estoppel.
Yeah. I know it can be a bit tricky. Can you remind us what it is?
Basically, it means you can't go back on your word
Yeah.
if you've led someone to rely on it.
And they've been harmed because of that reliance.
Exactly. It would be unfair.
Okay, so how did that play out in this case?
So Total Petroleum had this agreement with another company, Tyree Plus.
Okay.
Tyree Plus couldn't transfer their distribution rights without permission.
A standard clause, I imagine.
Yeah, but then Tyree Plus changes its name to SuperPro.
Okay.
They tell Total about it,
Uh-huh.
but they don't say that SuperPro is a totally different company.
Oh, sneaky.
Right. And Total, thinking it's just a name change, signs new agreement.
Oh, no.
Yeah, later they find out they were tricked.
Wow. So did Total Petroleum try to get out of that new agreement?
They did.
And what did Tyree Plus say?
They said, nope, you're stopped from doing that.
Because they thought it was just a name change.
Yeah.
Did it work?
It did not.
It didn't.
Nope. The court said Total hadn't been informed properly.
So Tyree Plus's sneakiness backfired.
It did.
What's the lesson here?
Honesty is the best policy.
Yeah. Especially in business.
Especially in business.
Right. I think we'll pause here for now.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground. Contracts, land ownership, even the complexities of marriage annulment in the Philippines.
It's been fascinating.
It has.
Seeing how these legal principles work in real life.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And we've only just scratched the surface. Stay tuned for part 2 of our Philippine civil law deep dive, where we'll unravel even more cases and uncover even more legal insights that you can use in your own life.
Can't wait.
Thanks for listening.
See you soon.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're continuing our journey through Philippine civil law. This time we're going even deeper into property, ownership, and those cases where things aren't always as they seem.
It's amazing how these cases show the clash between, legal ideas and what actually happens in real life.
Right. It's not just about what's written down. You got to understand, like possession, intent, all those messy human things.
It gets messy.
It does. Okay, let's jump into our next case. Vines Realty Corporation v. Rodel Rhett. It involves a big piece of land with a whole history of transfers, mineral claims, and informal settlers.
Oh, wow. That sounds complicated.
It is. So we've got Vines Realty Corporation, VRC. They buy a portion of this land at auction,
Okay.
but they run into trouble with informal settlers.
People living there.
Yeah, people who've been living there for a long time. They say they have rights to the land.
I see.
One of these settlers, Rodel Rhett, he challenges VRC's ownership, saying there was fraud in the original title.
So it's like a big company versus the little guy.
Yeah, a bit of a David and Goliath situation. So legally speaking, what's Rhett trying to do?
He's trying to use something called reversion.
Okay.
Basically asking the government to take back the land if there's something wrong with the original title.
So if there was fraud involved?
Exactly, but it's not that simple.
It never is. What's the catch?
The Office of the Solicitor General, the OSG, they can't just jump in based on anyone's word.
Oh.
They need a recommendation from a specific government agency that handles land.
So there's a process.
A whole process.
Did Rhett manage to get the OSG on his side?
He did not.
He didn't.
The court said the OSG needs a recommendation, not just an accusation.
Uh-huh.
And Rhett didn't have enough evidence to back up his claim.
Oh, so it was a loss for him.
It was.
Okay, so the takeaway here is...
Follow the process.
Yeah.
Those legal procedures are there for a reason.
Checks and balances.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's move on to Republic v. Science Park of the Philippines.
Okay.
This one's about following the rules when it comes to land registration.
The most important part.
Right, getting that official title. So what happened in this case?
Science Park of the Philippines, they wanted to register land in Batangas.
Okay.
They said they owned it based on a deed of sale, and they'd been using it forever.
Sounds pretty straightforward.
Right. But the government said, hold on, not so fast.
What was the issue?
They didn't have enough proof.
Proof of what?
Proof of possession.
So it's not enough to just say, hey, we've been using this land.
Nope. You need evidence.
What kind of evidence?
You have to show you've been using it openly, continuously, since at least June 12, 1945, or even earlier.
Wow, that's going way back.
It is.
So did Science Park have what they needed?
They did not.
They didn't. What happened?
Their application was denied.
Wow. So what's the lesson here for our listener?
Land registration is serious business.
Uh-huh.
You need solid evidence to back up your claims.
Don't just assume you're good because you've been using the land.
Exactly.
Okay, our next case takes us into the world of wills and estates.
Always interesting.
Always. In the matter of the petition for probate of the last will and testament of Cecilia Esguerra Cosico, deceased v. Jose M. Cosico.
Long title.
It is. So this case shows how courts make sure wills are done properly.
Especially when there are questions about the person's mental capacity.
Yeah, or if someone might have been pressured into something.
Undue influence.
Right. So in this case, we have Cecilia Cosico, who wanted to make a will.
Mm-hmm.
She was physically disabled,
Okay.
and she couldn't read or write.
That can be a problem with legal documents.
It can. So how do you make a will if you can't read it?
Philippine law has special rules for that.
Oh, there are safeguards.
Yes, to protect people who are blind or illiterate.
Okay, what are they?
The will has to be read aloud to them twice.
Okay.
Once by a witness, and again by the notary public.
To make sure they understand.
Exactly.
So was this done for Cecilia?
Her half-siblings, they were fighting the will.
They were?
They said it wasn't read aloud properly.
Oh, so they were trying to get it thrown out?
Yes, but the lawyer and the witnesses said they explained everything to her.
He said, she said, again.
It happens a lot.
It does. So who did the court believe?
They sided with the will being valid.
I did.
They said even though the exact letter of the law might not have been followed perfectly, the spirit of the law was upheld.
So they focused on Cecilia's intent.
Right. They were convinced that she understood and agreed to everything.
That's good. It sounds like they really wanted to honor her wishes.
They did.
Okay, now let's talk HOAs.
Homeowners associations.
The ones that can be a blessing and a curse.
Oh, yeah. Lots of drama there.
There is. This is Ferndale Homes, Homeowners Association, Inc., v. Spouses, Harlingcast, Abion and Daryl Gray Sabion. And it's all about those dreaded HOA fees.
Everyone loves those, right?
Right. So imagine buying a new home, excited about the neighborhood,
Yeah.
and then bam, you get hit with a bill for HOA dues.
Including charges from before they even owned the place.
Exactly. That's what happened to the Abion spouses. They bought several lots in Ferndale Homes, and they weren't happy about those charges.
I can see why.
They thought it was unfair to pay for the previous owner's debts.
It makes sense.
They also objected to the crazy high interest rates,
How high?
24% per year,
Ouch.
plus an 8% penalty per year on top of that.
Wow.
So were they stuck with those charges?
Well, the court stepped in and said those were unconscionable penalties.
Unconscionable. What does that mean?
Basically, it means they were way too high, totally unreasonable.
Okay.
So they reduced them.
They did.
Yeah. So they still had to pay the dues, but not those crazy penalties.
So even when you're obligated to pay HOA fees, there are limits.
There are. They have to be fair.
All right, back to land registration with Republic v. Heirs of Julian Standana.
Okay.
This case shows how things can get complicated, even with a court decision.
It can get messy.
It can.
Ah.
So the heirs of Julian Standana want to register land in Pasig City.
Okay.
They have a court ruling from way back in 1967 that says their family are the rightful owners.
Seems pretty clear cut.
Right. But the Land Registration Authority, the LRA, they raise a red flag.
What was the problem?
They say part of the land might already be registered in another case.
Oh, that's not good.
2 titles for the same land. That's a recipe for disaster.
Major legal mess.
So was there another title?
The court investigated. They couldn't find any evidence of it.
No records, no title, nothing.
Nothing.
So it was like a ghost title.
A phantom title causing problems.
So what happened in the end?
The court said, since there's no proof of another registration and no one's objecting, you can register the land.
So the heirs won.
I did.
Okay, but what's the takeaway here?
Accurate record keeping is essential.
Yeah, to prevent these kinds of headaches.
Exactly.
Okay, this next case is interesting.
Okay.
Christita Anaban v. Betty Anaban Alfuler.
Uh-huh.
It's about how courts handle traditional practices that might clash with national laws.
That's a tricky one.
It is. So we have a couple, Pedrito and Virginia, married according to Iloilo customs in 1942.
Okay.
A few years later, they get a divorce.
A divorce. But the Philippines doesn't have divorce.
Right, but this was granted by the Iloilo Council, according to their traditions.
Interesting. So they followed their customs.
Exactly. Then, Pedrito remarries, again, following Iloilo customs. Everything seems fine, but then he passes away,
Oh, no.
and a dispute breaks out over his estate.
Between who?
The children from his first marriage
Okay.
and the children from his second marriage.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Right. The kids from the first marriage, they said the Iloilo divorce wasn't valid.
Because it wasn't recognized under national law.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
they were saying the second marriage wasn't legal and those kids couldn't inherit.
Wow. So it was customary law versus the formal legal system.
Exactly. What did the court decide?
Well, unfortunately for the kids from the second marriage, the court said the Iloilo divorce wasn't valid.
Oh, so they weren't recognized as heirs.
That's right. It shows the importance of making sure traditional practices line up with national laws.
Especially for big things like marriage and divorce.
It can have huge consequences.
Okay, let's move on to Phil Estate Properties v. Hermana Realty. This one's about real estate transactions and those moments when ownership actually changes hands.
Okay.
Imagine you buy a condo,
Uh-huh.
you pay the full price,
Okay.
you get a deed of sale,
Uh-huh.
but it's not fully executed, no notarization, no official stamp.
Oh, that's a problem.
It is. And the seller says, you need to pay some taxes before you get the official documents in the title.
Mm.
But you're saying, hey, I paid for the condo, give me my paperwork.
So who's right?
Well, in this case, Hermana Realty, the buyer, had paid everything.
Okay.
But Phil Estate Properties, the seller, was holding back the documents until those taxes were paid.
So what happened?
The court said the buyer was right.
They were.
They said once you pay the full price, you're entitled to the documents.
Yeah.
So the seller had to hand them over.
Right away.
But did the buyer still have to pay the taxes?
Oh, yes. The court made it clear that paying the taxes and transferring the title were separate obligations.
So it's about being clear about who's responsible for what.
Absolutely. Especially in real estate, those details matter.
Okay, let's get back to nature and land ownership. Remember accretion.
The gradual buildup of land.
Yeah, Aurora Tinsman of the Heirs of Ma Isabel M. Vasquez takes us back to that concept, but with a twist.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So we have the Magdiong River,
All right.
changes course,
Okay.
encroaches on one property,
Uh-huh.
creates a new piece of land, and someone gets a title for that new land.
So it's like they got free land from the river.
That's what it looks like, right?
Right.
But the original landowner, they challenge that new title.
They do.
Yeah, they're saying, hey, that land might be on your property now, but it's still mine.
Interesting.
So did the court agree?
Well, they had to look closely at that new title, and guess what?
Right.
It was based on a special work order,
Okay.
which isn't a legal way to get ownership in the Philippines.
So the title wasn't valid?
Nope. And the court said accretion can't be used to fix a bad title.
You need to have a good title for the original property.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to heirs of Eutychio Elliott v. Danilo Corcuera. This case is all about due process and fairness in land disputes.
Making sure everyone's rights are protected.
Right. So we have Danilo Corcuera. He says he owns this land in Zambales.
Okay.
He's got an original certificate of title, an OCT.
The official document.
Exactly. He sues the heirs of Eutychio Elliott, saying they're on his land illegally.
Okay, so another land battle, but this time with a title involved?
You'd think that would make things clear, right? But the heirs of Elliott, they fight back.
What do they say?
They say Corcuera got his title fraudulently.
Oh, wow.
And they say they've been living on that land forever, even before Corcuera got his title.
So they're saying his claim is bogus.
Basically, yeah. And they bring up this legal concept called action publiciana.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one. What is it?
It's about getting back possession of property, no matter who has the title.
So it's not just about the paperwork.
Nope. You have to prove you have the better right to be there.
Even if the other person has the title.
Even then. So did the court buy Corcuera's story?
They did not.
They didn't.
The Supreme Court said his title was messed up, obtained through fraud. And the Elliots had a stronger claim because they'd been living there for so long.
So they had the better right to possession.
Exactly.
Okay. What's the takeaway here for our listener?
Don't assume a title is the end of the story.
Right. The court can look beyond the paperwork to make sure things are fair.
Justice prevails.
All right. Next up is Development Bank of the Philippines v. Evelina Togol.
Okay.
This one's a reminder that even powerful institutions have to play by the rules.
Accountability is important.
It is. So imagine getting a loan for a big project.
Yeah, okay.
You start building, everything's going according to plan.
Mm-hmm.
Then the bank says, nope, we're not giving you the rest of the money.
Way.
They say you haven't met certain requirements.
Oh, no. Requirements that weren't in the original agreement.
Exactly. That's what happened to Catherine Togol. She got a loan from the Development Bank of the Philippines, DBP, for her poultry farm.
Okay.
But when she asked for more funds, they said no.
What was their reason?
They said she hadn't built enough poultry houses and hadn't invested enough of her own money.
But were those in the original loan agreement?
Nope, not a word about it.
So they were changing the rules.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Catherine and her family said DBP was acting unfairly.
And were they?
The court agreed with them.
They did.
They said DBP wasn't acting in good faith by withholding the funds.
Wow.
They also said DBP's attempt to foreclose the property was bogus.
So, a big win for Catherine.
It was.
What's the lesson here?
Clear communication is crucial.
Especially with financial agreements.
Don't be afraid to challenge unfair practices.
Even if it's a big bank.
Okay, our next case. Danilo A. David v. Bank of Philippine Islands. This one's about the fine print.
Uh-oh. The fine print can be dangerous.
It can. It's about those little details that can really add up, especially when it comes to credit cards and debt.
Yeah, those interest charges and penalties can really get you.
They can. So Danilo David, he fell behind on his credit card payments.
Okay.
The BPI sues him for the outstanding balance.
Makes sense.
But the problem wasn't whether he owed money. It was how much.
Ah, so a dispute over the calculations.
Exactly. There were discrepancies between BPI's records, the statements sent to David, even their own employees' testimony.
Wow, so a lot of confusion.
A whole lot.
Yeah.
The court had to figure out the right amount owed based on all these legal principles about interest and payments.
That sounds like a headache.
It was. So, what's the takeaway for our listener?
Pay attention to those statements.
Yeah.
Make sure the numbers add up.
Double check everything.
Always.
Okay, let's talk about Kong v. Spouses, Juana Galang. This one's another estoppel case.
Okay, so we're talking about a situation where someone's actions prevent them from enforcing their rights.
Exactly. So imagine you fall behind on your mortgage.
Happens to a lot of people.
It does. You lose your job, you hit hard times.
Yeah.
but you manage to start making payments again.
Okay.
The bank accepts those payments for almost 2 years.
So you're thinking you're good.
Right, you're back on track.
But then...
The bank suddenly decides to foreclose.
Oh no, after accepting all those payments.
Yep. Doesn't seem very fair, does it?
Not at all. What happened?
Well, the court said the bank, HSBC, SRP, they were stopped from foreclosing.
They were. Why?
Because they had accepted those payments for so long.
Ah, so they created a reasonable expectation.
Exactly. The homeowners thought they were safe.
Makes sense.
The court said the bank's actions contradicted their right to enforce the mortgage.
Wow, so even banks have to be consistent.
They do.
Okay, what's our next case?
We're revisiting the heirs of Julian Stana.
Again, they're back in court.
They are Republic v. Heirs of Julian Stana Anna.
It's another land ownership saga.
Okay, what's going on this time?
They're trying to register land in Pasig City based on that old court decision from 1967. But the LRA, they step in again.
Those guys are persistent.
They are. They're worried about conflicting claims.
Double titling again.
Yep. They think part of the land might already be registered to someone else.
So did they find another title? Nope. The court looked everywhere. No records, no title, nothing.
Another phantom title.
It seems so. So what was the outcome?
Well, without any proof of a conflicting claim, the court let the heirs register the land.
So they won again.
They did. It really emphasizes the need for accurate land records.
Yeah, to avoid all this confusion.
Exactly.
Okay, let's wrap up this section with Danilo A. David v. Bank of Philippine Islands.
Danilo David again?
He's back. Still dealing with financial issues.
Okay, what's going on this time?
It's another credit card debt case.
All right. Is it about the calculations again?
You guessed it. He's saying the bank's calculations are wrong, that he doesn't owe as much as they say.
So they're fighting over the numbers.
Yep. The court had to dig into the credit card agreement, look at his payment history, examine how the bank calculated interest and fees.
So did the court side with David this time?
Unfortunately, no.
They didn't.
They said the bank's calculations were actually correct.
Oh, wow.
So it's a reminder to understand those credit card agreements.
Yeah, those terms and conditions matter.
Okay, one more case for this section. Kong v. Spouses Wanagalang. This one's about mortgage problems and waiting too long to assert your rights.
Okay, what happened?
Imagine you're facing foreclosure.
Scary stuff.
It is. But instead of fighting back right away, you wait.
Hoping things will work out.
Maybe. Or maybe you're trying to negotiate.
But what if you wait too long?
That's the problem. That's what happened to the spouses Galang.
Okay.
They waited too long to challenge the foreclosure, and the bank, HSBC SRP, said it was too late.
Too late, like they missed their chance.
Yep. It's called latches.
Lashes.
Yeah, it basically means you've waited too long to assert your rights, and now you've lost them.
Oh, wow. Did the court agree with the bank?
They did. They said the Galang spouses' delay had hurt the bank.
How?
Because too much time had passed, it made it harder for the bank to defend itself.
Ah, I see. So what's the lesson here?
Don't wait. If you've got a legal problem, act fast.
Especially with something like foreclosure?
Okay, let's switch gears. Business time. We're talking about Phil Estate Properties v. Hermana Realty.
All right. What kind of business dispute are we dealing with?
Non-compete clauses.
Those can be tricky.
They can. So non-compete clauses are supposed to prevent unfair competition.
Okay.
Like if you leave a company, you can't go work for their rival.
To protect their secrets and stuff.
Right. But they also have to be fair to the individual.
You still have the right to work.
Exactly. So in this case, there was a non-compete clause between Phil Estate Properties, Inc., FEPI, and Hermana Realty, Inc., HRI.
Okay.
We don't know the exact details of their business relationship,
What?
but one of them, probably HRI, they broke that non-compete clause.
So they were competing unfairly.
Maybe stealing clients, using confidential information, something like that.
So FEPI took them to court.
They did.
What happened?
The court sided with FEI.
They did.
They said the non-compete clause was valid.
So they enforced it.
They did.
What's the lesson here?
Non-compete clauses are serious business.
Don't mess with them.
All right, back to unjust enrichment with Aurora Tenzwan, Juarez Oma, Isabel M. Vasquez. Remember, unjust enrichment is about preventing someone from benefiting unfairly.
Right, even if there's no clear contract violation.
Exactly. So, in this case, we have Aurora Tenzwan and the Vasquez heirs fighting over land.
Another land dispute.
It seems to be a theme today. The details are a bit unclear, but it sounds like there was some confusion about who had the right to use the land.
Okay.
Tenzwan said the Vasquez heirs had benefited unfairly.
So she's saying they got something they shouldn't have.
Exactly. Did the court agree with her?
They did. They said the Vasquez heirs had been unjustly enriched.
So what did they do?
They ordered them to pay 10 swan for the value they had received.
So they had to compensate her,
Yeah, the court was trying to make things right.
even though it wasn't a simple contract case.
Right. It shows that courts care about fairness, even in messy situations.
Okay, let's explore another unjust enrichment case. Heirs of Eutychio Elliott v. Danilo Corcuera.
All right. What happened here?
This one shows that unjust enrichment can happen even when a contract exists.
How so?
Well, imagine you have an agreement about some land.
Okay.
You make payments, invest money, all based on promises.
Uh-huh.
But the other party doesn't hold up their end of the bargain.
Oh, that's not good.
It's not. They benefit from your efforts, but you get nothing.
That sounds unfair.
It is. And that's where unjust enrichment comes in.
So it's not just about the absence of a contract, it's about a contract being broken.
Exactly. One party benefits unfairly because the other party didn't do what they promised.
Did that happen in this case?
It did. The court said there was unjust enrichment and ordered the party who benefited to pay compensation.
So they had to make things right.
They did. It's a good reminder that contracts are meant to be followed.
And there are consequences for breaking them.
All right, let's talk about Development Bank of the Philippines v. Evelina Togol.
Okay.
This one's about loans, communication breakdowns, and holding institutions accountable.
Sounds familiar.
It might. So we have Catherine Togol. She gets an agricultural loan from DBP.
For a poultry farm. Right.
That's right. She starts the project. Everything's going according to plan.
Okay.
Then she needs more funds.
Makes sense. Big projects often need more funding as they progress.
Exactly. So she asks DBP for the next installment of the loan. They refuse.
They did. Why?
They say she hasn't met certain requirements.
Like what?
They say she hasn't built enough poultry houses, hasn't invested enough of her own money.
But were those requirements in the original loan agreement?
Nope, not at all.
Oh, so they're trying to change the deal after she's already started.
Exactly. Catherine and her family cried foul, said DBP was acting in bad faith.
So it's like they were trying to pull a fast one on her.
It seems that way. What did the court say?
I'm guessing they sided with Catherine.
You bet. The court said DBP was wrong to withhold the funds.
Good.
They also said DBP's attempt to foreclose on the property was invalid.
So a victory for Catherine.
A big one. It shows that even powerful institutions can't just change the rules whenever they feel like it.
They have to be transparent and honor their agreements.
Exactly. Okay, now let's talk about a case that delves into the intersection of family traditions and the legal system. Spouses, Aguinaldo A. Alcaraz and Evelyn C. Alcaraz v. Philippine Savings Bank.
Okay. What's the issue here?
Inheritance, property rights, and those tricky situations where family members don't always see eye to eye.
Family drama. Always fun.
Right. So in this case, we have siblings who co-own some land.
Okay.
One of the siblings, Aguinaldo Alcaraz, he uses the property as collateral for a loan.
Without telling the others.
You guessed it. Big mistake.
I bet.
So Aguinaldo defaults on the loan, and the bank, Philippine Savings Bank, they want to foreclose on the entire property.
Oh no, so the other siblings are in trouble because of their brother's actions.
That's the problem. They say they shouldn't be penalized for something they didn't agree to.
Makes sense. It's their inheritance too.
Exactly. So the court had to decide, can the bank go after the whole property, or are the innocent siblings protected?
That's a tough one. What did they decide?
The Supreme Court sided with the siblings. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're wrapping up our Philippines civil law marathon.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun with legal cases.
It does. And this time, we're really focusing on the idea of fairness.
Yeah, balance, understanding those little details that can make a big difference.
Exactly. The law isn't always just black and white, right?
Oh, it's about finding solutions that actually work in the real world.
Okay, let's jump into spouses Aguinaldo A. Alcaraz and Evelyn C. Alcaraz v. Philippine Savings Bank. It's about family, property, and what happens when someone takes out a loan without telling everyone.
Oh, those secret loans never end well.
They don't. So imagine this. You and your siblings, you inherit some land.
Okay.
You've got plans, maybe building a house, maybe developing it together.
Sounds nice.
But then you find out one of your siblings used that land as collateral for a loan, and they didn't tell anyone.
That's not good. Big breach of trust.
It is. And to make things worse, that sibling, they can't pay back the loan.
So what happened?
The bank, Philippine Savings Bank, wants to foreclose on the whole property.
Even though the other siblings had nothing to do with it.
Exactly. The other siblings are furious. They're saying, hey, we didn't agree to this. Why should we lose our inheritance?
I can see their point.
Right. So the court had this tough decision.
Yeah, who did they side with? The bank or the siblings?
They sided with the siblings.
Wow, really?
The Supreme Court said that while creditors have rights, they can't just stomp all over the rights of innocent co-owners.
So they protected the siblings' inheritance?
They did. They said it would be unfair to punish them for something they didn't do.
Makes sense. It's a reminder that sometimes the law has to consider those family dynamics.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's talk about Republic v. Merlinda L. Posadas.
Okay.
It's about land registration, but this time we're looking at the idea of abandonment.
Abandonment, like just leaving land and forgetting about it?
Kind of, yeah. So imagine a piece of land. It's been registered to someone for years, but nobody's using it.
Okay.
Then someone else comes along and says, hey, that land's abandoned. It should be mine.
So it's like finders keepers for land?
In a way, yeah. But there are rules, of course.
Of course.
So in this case, the Republic of the Philippines, they said a piece of land owned by Merlinda Posadas had been abandoned. They wanted to take it back.
Makes sense. Maybe use it for something public.
Right. But could they just do that?
I guess that's the question, right? Is it really abandoned?
Exactly. It's not enough to just say, hey, nobody's using it. You have to prove the owner intended to abandon it.
So they just gave up their rights to the land?
That's what the Republic had to prove. They had to show evidence, like, did Merlinda Posadas pay taxes on the land? Did she try to use it? Anything to show she still considered it hers.
So what did the court say?
They sided with Merlinda Posadas.
They did.
They said the Republic didn't have enough proof that she meant to abandon the land.
Just not using it wasn't enough.
Nope. It's a reminder that you can't just take someone's land just because it looks neglected.
There have to be safeguards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk easements.
Easements, those are rights to use someone else's property, right?
Exactly. It's Spapes, George Bongolan, and Julie Bongolan v. spouses, Conrado T.U. and Lena Limui.
Oh, okay.
And this case shows why clear agreements are so important.
When it comes to property, yeah, things can get messy.
They can. So imagine this. You need to access your property,
Okay.
but the only way is through your neighbor's land.
Mm-hmm.
You make a deal, an easement, they let you use a part of their land, maybe for a driveway,
Makes sense. Being a good neighbor,
right? But things can go wrong if the agreement isn't crystal clear.
I bet.
So in this case, the Bongolan spouses and the Yume spouses, they had an easement agreement.
Okay.
The Bongolans could use part of the Yuzi's land as a passageway,
Uh-huh.
but then a dispute erupted.
Why? What happened?
The UC spouses said the Bongolans were using the passageway for things they weren't supposed to.
Oh, so they were going beyond the agreement.
Exactly. Like maybe they were driving trucks through it when they were only supposed to walk.
Taking advantage.
So did the court agree with the UCs?
They did.
They said the Bongolans were breaking the rules.
And they had to stop.
They did. So what's the takeaway here for our listener?
Get it in writing.
Yeah, even simple agreements need to be clear and specific.
Especially when it comes to property.
Okay, for our final case today, we're diving into Republic of the Philippines v. Filament S. Cortez. It's about those tricky time limits in the law, specifically the concept of prescription.
Prescription, that's about losing your rights if you wait too long, right?
Exactly. So imagine you inherit land from your family,
Okay.
but for whatever reason, the title wasn't transferred to your name.
Oh, that's not good.
No, but you've always considered the land yours.
Yeah.
Everyone knows it's been in your family forever.
So it's yours, morally speaking.
Right. But then the government comes along and says, hold on, this land technically belongs to us, the public. You never officially registered it, so we're taking it back.
Wow, that's harsh.
It is. That's exactly what happened to Filimon Cortez.
Oh, no. Did he just give up?
No way. He fought back. He said, hey, my family and I, we've been using this land for decades. It's ours.
So he was claiming ownership based on possession.
Exactly. He was relying on this concept called acquisitive prescription.
Okay, remind me what that is again?
Basically, if you've been using land openly and continuously for a certain amount of time, you can gain ownership rights, even without a formal title.
Interesting. So like squatter's rights, but with a fancier name.
Kind of, yeah. But the key is you have to meet all the requirements.
Like what?
Your possession has to be continuous, open, and obvious, like everyone knows you're using the land.
Okay.
And it has to last for a specific period of time, which varies depending on the situation.
So did Cortez meet those requirements?
Unfortunately, no. The court said he didn't have all the elements of acquisitive prescription.
Oh, no.
So they sided with the Republic.
They took his land.
They did. It's a tough reminder that those legal time limits are real. If you don't act within those time frames, you can lose your rights, even if you think your claim is strong.
So you snooze, you lose, legally speaking.
Exactly. Always better to be safe than sorry, right?
Yeah.
Get those legal ducks in a row.
Especially when it comes to something as important as land.
Well, that's it for our Philippine civil law deep dive. We covered a lot of ground.
We did. Contracts, property, family matters, even those unique concepts in Philippine law.
It's been fascinating to see how these cases reflect the values of fairness and balance in the legal system.
Absolutely. The law is always trying to find solutions that make sense for real people and real situations.
And that's what makes it so interesting to explore. So, to our listener, we hope you've learned something new today. Maybe you've even gained a new appreciation for the complexities of the law and how it impacts our lives.
It's all around us.
It is. So stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, a little legal knowledge can go a long way. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.